Hello and welcome to another live stream. Let's get the lights on so we can see what we're doing. Although it has to be said that I haven't worked out what I'm going to be doing today just yet. I have a lot of models in front of me and I could quite happily paint absolutely any of them. Got some Japanese down here. I've got some Axis in a box. The vast majority of this is Conflict 47. I've got some Schwertruppen that I have been painting over the last couple of streams that I still haven't finished. I have some Nachtalben, Night Terrors. Lots of work has been done on the skin and the uniform, but there's still plenty more to go on them. I've got my Ghost Squad, including Gunzo, special edition model. And because he's slightly smaller than everyone else, I've put him on a base. If I take this guy, just an example. So these two guys are standing, and you can see they end up being the same height. But if you look at the bases, this base is quite a bit thicker. So I've just added just a normal lipped, kind of hollow base. Sorry, not lip base. Just to raise him up to the same height. I've got a tank. It's tank. It is a Hargo light tank, or tankette even, with a low velocity pen of 3 main gun, a couple of machine guns. This thing, possibly quite useful in conflict. Cannot confirm. But I think I actually just need to throw a wash on this next. Because I've picked out all the details, I think. Yeah. So that may be something we can do early and throw it aside. On the painting handle as it stands, is this really cool samurai model that I found. And as you can see, it's becoming blue and brown, as everything Japanese does for me. So why not start there, given that it's on the handle? And oddly, I think this one also needs just a little bit of work before we throw a wash over it. Loving the detail on this one. It really is a shame just how lazily I'm going to paint this. But look at the armor. So well detailed all over the armor. So jokes aside, I will be starting painting with brown because I always do. We discussed this in the last stream, didn't we? That I paint predominantly with earthy tones. And partly that is because I've spent the last several years painting World War II bolt action models. But even before then, I was kind of jumping down on there we go. I was kind of what's the expression I'm using? I would make quite heavy use of brown as a filler color. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's one of those parts of it being an art style. And nothing is wrong so long as it's done deliberately. that's way too much. Yeah, there is a little bit of a misprint on this one, just on that shoulder pad, and if you see on the back of the helmet just there, it's not a big deal. I think once I finish painting it, it will probably become quite hard to notice any of that. None of it's structural. I think that's all I needed to do for that. Weirdly, this is the same brown. You can just about see there's a slight difference between the helmet and the armor on the back. That's the same paint, but on the helmet, that's when it came out the airbrush, and on the on his back, on his rear armor there, that is the stuff I've just put on with a brush. Now it is still wet, but wet paint usually appears darker in most colors. Skin tone. We'll check again once that's dried, because that's actually an interesting experiment to have a look at as to how that changes once it does dry. The face, especially on this sculpt, has come out really rather nicely. It's one of those things where I kind of want to get into digital sculpting. But it's a lot of a time investment. And that's probably time I don't have. So just need to run the katana with black. I think that is now ready for the wash, probably. Is this? I think so. This is my favourite model recently. So this is a Shibito, Daughter of the Motherland. So I've used a medieval style of clothing with a big greatcoat, which is similar-ish to the Daughter of the Motherland. Had to put the hammer and sickle on so that it matches, but then the arms and the head are from the Warlord Games Project Z, one of the zombie sprues. So that is actually a Warlord Game zombie arm, which is kind of funny. I've just had a thought that I don't actually know what what the paint scheme is on my Daughters of the Motherland. Does it matter if it's different? I don't think it does. I think I did the armor in green. And I need to get more green because my green is dead. So if I do the trousers in brown, because most of my, I'll try and lighten it a bit because most of my Soviets have had grey, brown and occasionally green uniforms, but it's mostly been that light tan and brown. And then the body armor, I'll do that in the boring military green. Too much water on the brush there. That's better. Yeah, the top part of the kind of the collar isn't really the same style as like a Soviet greatcoat, but it's the best ad. Saying that, I made this quite a while ago. Like the actual, like mixing these parts together digitally, combining them to make Daughters of the Motherland pieces. I probably could do better these days. There's a lot more options now than there was. I didn't even know when I got these because I don't think I did a video on them. Because it would be easy to check if I had, because you just look at the date of the video. I do know that the I'm thinking. This is difficult. Yeah, so I started bolt action first, and then I picked up a couple of Conflict 47 bits. But I didn't really get in, and that's like 3.5, 4 years ago now. And I didn't really get into Conflict until 2nd edition, like the end of last year. But I had a bunch of models, and the daughters are included in that. And I think they were probably some of the earliest ones. Did I buy them at the same time as my T-34? Because I got a T-34 ZP and built it up with the 85mm cannon turret as well. And I've pretty much only used it with that turret because I've only really played bolt action. Now, technically, I have used that ZP turret once in one game of 1st edition Conflict. Yeah. So let's go. Like I said, military green. What little there is left of it. Let's all gather around and laugh at what is the horrible, lumpy remnants of that's my green paint. We can probably coax enough life into it. I just haven't got around to buying more, that's all. Yuck. That is all manner of, like I said, chalky and nasty. There you go, it's the armoured shirt, and then let's see if I start using some of this light brown that's on the wet palette now. Just give some super basic highlights here. And then throw the wash over the top of that. We actually need to put 2 separate washes on this one, because all of the cloaks for my Daughters of the Motherland, because they're red, I actually have a purple wash, and purple's a nice shadow colour for red, kind of the darkness of blue. And actually it's going to go nicely with the purple of the skin. Although arguably it is going to be different pigmentation. Yeah, here we go. So strangely they're both armor painter. Not that that matters. Base coat the skin, and then put the wash on the coat, and then we'll probably leave it for a bit before we put the wash on the rest of it, because I don't want them bleeding into each other. It was an interesting choice when it came to zombie skin. And it very well could have been, very easily could have been green skin, which is kind of the classic unhealthy zombie look. Or the kind of just heavily desaturated kind of Caucasian skin, but both of those end up being very similar to some camouflage, some military uniforms. And I'm going to be creating Shibito out of just every... I like the idea of having like a Brit, a Soviet, one of everything, one American, one of this, one of that, one of the other. So I wanted skin that's not going to clash with anything. And so I very nearly went with like a really blackened skin, like a burned skin. But I ended up going with purple. And it seems to work. What colour? Do I have to make her hair a particular colour? I hadn't thought this far ahead. Excuse me. See, the one really good thing about painting female heads, women's heads on models, is that you don't have to paint ears. I hate painting ears. I mean, I'm not good at painting any part of the face, generally speaking. But painting ears is just weird. I never make them look right. It's just completely impossible. Right, let's move over, like I said, to this purple wash. And I've only got that. I've only got this wash because we bought it by mistake. I wanted a purple paint and we ended up with a purple tone. And not realising that tone means wash. Right, let's switch over to a scrappy brush as well. Oh, that is not how I wanted it to go. That is quite definitely stripping the red paint off. Can you see just here? Kind of that line there. That the wash is interfering with my red paint. Now maybe I didn't leave the red long enough to dry. So I'm just having to be really careful to not go over the same part twice. Because if I go over it with the wash, then it won't scrub up the red. But if I go over it the wash, leave it for a few seconds, something in the purple wash is making the red paint melt. And it might just be the water, because I might not have left the red long enough to dry. Hello, Andre. How you doing? Yeah. I can get one easy stroke over everything, one coat, but as soon as you go back over it, yeah, it's stripping away. So this, Andre, if you've just joined us, is my Shibito, Daughter of the Motherland. She's made, like, the torso and legs are all some medieval stuff that I found, mainly because it's the only kind of cloak that I could get that was close enough at the time, although this was a few years back I actually put these together. And the arms and heads are from Warlord Games Project Z, which I think is quite appropriate. I want to see if I can flood some of these folds. It's very difficult to target a wash because they often move as they dry, and Army Painter's washes generally do move quite a lot, but we shall see. Yeah, I think I need to start leaving this alone. I think I need to put this aside and let it dry, because the more I muck with it, the worse it gets. Who's next? Do I want to paint this one? I don't know. I've had this one for a while, and I had a plan. I was doing the super artistic minimal paint jobs at the time, and I just had this kind of view of like samurai anime kind of scene where someone gets cut in half with a sword, but it just goes to black and you get that red line across the screen. So I was going to paint this model completely black except for around the area here where I draw a red line and then kind of OSL from the red line just in grey. So grayscale highlighted towards the red line and, as he's been cut. But I'm not sure if I want to do that, really. It's a nice idea, but nah. But now, do I want to paint this normally, unquotes? I don't know. Let's come back to it. I'm uninspired by that model. Absolutely uninspired. We can probably put the wash on the samurai and the tank, because they're going to use the same wash, actually. And I can just make a whole bunch of it. Ah, but my Shibito are also... my ghosts are always also going to use the same wash. Okay, fine. Okay, I'll do the ghosts. One ghost. So I need to do silver on the metallics, which is mainly the rifle. And then I'm going to do the diving bells in green. Ah, before I do that, I need to put brown on this one. And I need to put orange on this one. So this is Gunso, the limited edition model. Also a Ghost Warrior. He's the older style, so he's actually got a different, kind of a subtly different rifle. Can I show them on screen like that? No problem. See you in a bit, Andre. They do have the hexagonal barrel still. Sorry, octagonal barrel. But the kind of, this has at the breech, to kind of around the chamber here, you've got this extra detailing, and that's kind of been moved back here to the magazine. So we've now got this visible external, almost like a rotating magazine in the correct place on the rifle where a magazine would be, and it's sort of reminiscent of the of that on the original design, in that it's a cylinder with some lines on it. It's nice how they've kind of completely gotten rid of it, but they've managed to keep some elements of it in there, if you understand what I mean. I need the orange. Orange. That's not orange. This orange is also running out. Interesting. So if I grab some of that orange and mix it with the black that I've already got up here, I'm going to end up with a slightly more desaturated version. Although not as desaturated as it might have been. I've seen a few people paint this model really nicely, like with all of the rippling effects as he's phasing through the wall. So now if I give that a second coat without the black mixed in, and just kind of overbrush it mainly, I get a free bit of highlighting. Given that I'm going to be putting a wash on this, because this is just a wargaming model, I don't need it to be absolutely perfect. But it's just going to give me a really easy bit of highlighting. Did I miss anywhere? Yeah. Bit dark in that spot. Otherwise, I think that's got it all. Yep. So I do need to do the armor, even though the armor is quite different. We've still got shoulder pads, which will be brown. We don't have this kind of armored skirt. So I should probably do the thigh armor, because these guys, the new guys, don't have thigh armor, whereas this one does. So I'll use that in place of the armored skirt, kind of the nearest equivalence. So this is now my armor color, brown, which is going to show up as basically the same color on stream, because unfortunately this camera does tend to desaturate everything quite a bit. And then it's the shoulders. Get a peek of the armor there. Can't see it on the back. Do we have anything here? See, he's got an armor panel for his butt, and the new ones don't. So should I paint that as well? It is completely flat. It doesn't have the lines that I'm painting on, that I'm highlighting in that style. So I think I should probably leave it. However, the mechanical gubbins on his back can definitely be included. So I think that, oh, and his rifle. Just like a major component of the model that also needs to be painted. Although saying that, this is hardly the exciting part of the painting. Base coat, wash, and then the painting starts. I think I prefer the newer Shiboru rifle that the Ghosts have. Although, I do like the old one. It's kind of like a Delisle in a way, sort of. John Miller, hello, how you doing? The Delisle is an amalgamation of a few different pieces, but it's visually a Lee Enfield action and stock and rear stock with a massive silencer can from the front of the kind of from the chamber onwards. And it kind of reminds me of that, in that you've got this sort of normally proportioned receiver and stock of a World War II era rifle, and then just this much thicker barrel that's a single piece without a forestock. So the stock doesn't run beyond the chamber, basically. And it's also... Is it octagonal or hexagonal? It's hexagonal. It is not octagonal. I thought these were all octagonal. They are all six-sided. So the reason why I thought it was octagonal is because octagonal barrels in especially muskets were relatively common, because you take a piece of square stock, which is just common industry standard stuff in the era, drill a hole through it. There you go, there's a barrel, but you want to lighten it a bit because that's a massive piece of metal for what you actually need. So you just cut the corners off. Rather than milling it into a circle, which is a cylinder, which is much more difficult, much more time consuming, can be done and was done, but it's expensive to do. The much cheaper option is just to lop the corners off and make it an octagon. But these are not that. These are something else. Right. I want to do the diving helmets in green, but which green? So this is my usual light green that I use for highlighting. It's quite desaturated. I know everything shows up desaturated on this camera, but this is a relatively desaturated green. This is a very highly saturated green. Much, much green. You can see the difference there. But it's a little bit darker. But the problem here... gloss. You can't quite see it there in the very thin lettering there. This is a gloss paint. And I can mix a bit of a matte medium into it. I can mix a bit of another matte paint into it to let that gloss down. But it is going to always be glossy. And I don't like painting gloss paints early on in a paint job because because it changes how the later layers stick to it, and it changes how washes stick to it. And so what I think I want to do is I want to use this as the highlight paint, because that highly saturated look is going to be pretty good for what I want. And that means I should use this or the lumpy dark green. But I don't think this, because this is a much earthier tone, more so than this. So I think that's what I'm going to go with. I also have this, which is not a paint. It's a special FX acid. And I'm not really sure what it's intended for, but it sort of works like a green wash, dark green wash. But it is also fairly glossy. So what we might do, paint it with that, highlight it with that, and then use that as the wash. And if it doesn't work, I have acetone. I actually don't have acetone, I ran out, but I can buy acetone, because you can just buy acetone. So I need to go through Gunso and every single other one of the ghosts. And yes, it is rather odd talking about a squad of ghosts and them not being the Tanith. Oh, that is not happy with the blue. That's going to take a few layers. Oliver, hello, how you doing? Oh yeah, I'm going to have to go around and do several layers of this. Because that... oh, it is just the lens on the front. Oh dear. Come together. I like the idea of also doing the rim of the lens in a very dark black, which is technically eyeliner, but everything looks good in eyeliner. Yes. I went with because I was running the narrative day, I went with a very simple list. Essentially just, all exosuits. It was 2 squads of battle frame, a squad of assault frame. My officer was in battle frame. Strictly, the sniper team was not in armor. They were just I think they were regulars, so they were even like 4+ armor value. But it didn't matter. The sniper deployed by infiltrator onto the board, and my opponent brought in a Schwerlight's projector, which ignores cover saves, and just blatted them. Just absolutely just gone. And then Nachtjäger started swooping down. And destroying all my squads, and at that point it was very much in favour of my opponent. How long does this paint take to dry? I have no idea. It kind of looks dry, but that's dangerous, because if you start painting over that when it's not dry, even if it looks dry, it will tear the paint. Well, my next painting is some of the Axis stuff over here. So I'm going to just give it a minute and then give it another coat. Yeah, we got away with that, I think. That will do the job. This guy's my favourite one, the guy with the wrong arms. Painting one tiny part of a model repeatedly and moving them around is slightly annoying. I know there are people who paint like with the heads all on one stick together so they can paint all of the helmets or all of the faces in one go. Paint them all, put them down. Paint something else, come back when it's dry, paint the next layer. Very sensible. Unfortunately, these models are... they're not monolithic strictly, but the heads are attached, kind of sculpted into the bodies, into the shoulders. Head on the neck. Right, and back to the top. So we've got that. So what I'm planning on doing here is the old-fashioned like gemstone paint kind of highlighting thing, where you paint about a third or a half of it in the top with usually with a darker paint, but I've actually got a darker green in this gloss. And then specular highlights on top of that. But what I'll probably do is I'll do this glossy green first. If I mix it with my original green, I should get something quite lurid and unpleasant. That is, ugh, look at that, yuck. That's the colour I've just made. So if I put this... Right, I need a very small amount now. On the top, kind of like on a 30 or 35 degree angle, doesn't have to be exact, but just on one side from the top. That is not showing up on camera very well. I think we might have to do multiple layers of this as well. It's easier on these because they are more kind of rounded shape. Oliver asks, what do you make of the Nachtjäger? Did you see photographs of my table? My table started with a lot of Japanese soldiers, and then there were some Nachtjäger, and then there were no Japanese soldiers. Now, I had planned to put a couple of my squads, or at least one of my squads, of Shiboru armed. I'm going to put this on the left side just because of its pose. One of my Shiboru armed squads on ambush, and they would easily have torn up the Nachtjäger on the way in. Easily. Wouldn't even have been a fair fight. It would have just torn them up. But they turned up on turn 2. And I didn't have the time, didn't have the order dice at the right point to actually go into ambush. So it's very well played, very aggressive and quick with those units on behalf of my opponent. And I really, short of sitting in open ground at the back, in the back of kind of my backfield, my like rear line, there was nothing I really could have done. Just kind of stayed at the back and gone on ambush, because I knew ambush is the answer, but I wanted to be in cover and on ambush. That's looking better. Camera doesn't seem to see it, but it is better. It's Alan Rhombus. Hey, how you doing? What's up, Ed? Just got my first game of Conflict scheduled for tomorrow. Super pumped. Nice. What are you bringing? What faction? Because I am a few games in at the moment, and I have... Every game that I've played not against the other Japanese players, I have lost. And almost all of those I've been completely tabled. The poor Japanese at the moment are not having a good time. So now we move over to this weird acid effect stuff. Again, I've no idea what this is or what this is meant to be used for, how it's meant to be used. Because I just thought, oh, British Racing Green, I need some of that. Because my green paint is running out. But this is not paint. This is a special effects paint. 1,500 points of US. Linebacker, Coyote, Test Sherman, Firefly Officer, Firefly Squads ×2, Heavy Infantry Squads ×2. That's a good mix of like a lot of high speed stuff, but also with the Sherman Coyote and the heavy infantry, a decent lot of kind of static firepower as well. Not static, but you know, the longer range firepower. Right, let's see how this works. I'm actually slightly annoyed at the rebracketing of the American heavy infantry. Not massively annoyed, because I can deal with it, I can work around it. But it used to be that, like in first edition Conflict, you could have a officer squad of 1 to 3, but only if you already had 2 infantry squads. And the infantry squads were 5 to 10. But now, you can have an officer without the restriction, and you can have the infantry squads, but the infantry squads are 3 to 6 models, which is annoying, because I have 8 models. I'm not massively excited about getting any more of them. I mean, that's going to work. I think I need to suspend it. So what I'm doing now is I'm adjusting my painting handle so that his visor is as level as it can be. Because that is a different shape from the other ones. You can kind of see, not really. Yeah, you can kind of just about see the highlighting on that. So you've got light spot in the middle and dark ring around the outside, but also the top right-hand corner, which is this corner, is that slightly more vivid green. You can just about see it on the camera view there. So these lenses are much more rounded, which means gravity's not going to help me this time. Yeah, we'll see about that. American infantry on the docket for Q3, so maybe heavy infantry. Could be Paragons. Yeah. I have my suspicions about what that is, but I do not know. I have no connection to Warlord Games on account of being a tiny, tiny channel that no one cares about. We did notice that certain units on the roadmap, if you look over everything, certain entries were marked as this is this specific unit, right? So I think the ghosts, for example, it said Japanese Ghost Attack Squad, I think, or some of them did certainly. Then some of them just said squad mech character, but then right at the end of the year, it said Japanese mech and then in brackets new. And what that implies to me is that everything else that's coming before then is not a brand new model. It's a new version of an older kit. It might be a replacement. It might be a plastic version of the ED-SKaR stuff that they rushed. I think it's widely known now that they were all meant to be plastic, but to get the starter sets out quickly, they kind of converted them over for ED-SKaR, and now the plastic production is going to be coming through for them. So it might be Japanese Ghosts, the Ursus, and possibly even other things that we haven't seen new models of, like Daughters of the Motherland and, like you say, Paragons. Eternal Rhombus, my money is on heavy infantry because the Crawl Rules uses them as an example for using Tesla rifles. Yes. Having a lot more weapon options for existing squads is just a nice idea. Paulus the Mad. Hi, how you doing? How's the painting going? Just here for myself after repainting one of my Ogrins for the 3rd time. I will shoot your Ogrins with my Ghost Attack Squad. How's that going? See, I've got the white balance locked on this camera. Auto focus off, auto white balance off, everything else is set, and yet that is quite clearly adjusting the white balance. Or it's adjusting the brightness. There's no lock for the brightness, so it might be that. I hate auto features in cameras. They just flickering. One of my cameras, which I think is actually on this phone, which is not meant to do that. That's dead now. As like if I recorded my face while I'm talking, every time I open my mouth and my teeth are visible, it lowers the brightness, and every time I close my mouth, it ups the brightness. Which means every time, like just constantly, every few frames, it's flickering bright, dark, bright, dark, bright, dark. And it makes it very difficult to actually watch that footage. And it's like, why would you have a setting that does that in the camera? And why would you not be able to turn it off? Sorry, little bit of a rant there. They are coming out pretty well. And I think because of that acid effect paint, they will end up being glossy in the end, which means they're going to look like glass, or kind of glass-ish, which is pretty good. I need to do the metallics for them, which is a bright silver for them. Ah, thank you, Paulus. How's this purple and red doing? Not bad, actually. Yeah, you can clearly see where it was scrubbing away the red paint underneath. But I managed to make it work. We've got some dark spots where there should be dark spots, although not everywhere. Yeah, once I've highlighted that, that will look fine. And this guy just needs a wash. This is a really nice model. I need to remember where I got that from. Right. What was I doing? Metallics. My poor, like, bright silver paint has an absolutely gnarly, chewed up. You can't actually see it here. But the nozzle is split and, like, torn. Like, those little flakes there, that's bits of plastic. That's not paint. That's the actual plastic of the nozzle. And I have no idea what caused it. I don't know if it was like that when I first got it, or whether I've damaged it along the way, or whether it's just, I don't know. I'm in a very sneezy kind of mood today for some reason. Right, metallics. Paintbrush. Andre, I'm back. Did I miss anything important? Well, I sneezed a lot and died. We also painted the green on the lenses here. So that's Gunso, the older one, and then that's one of the newer ones. So there's a bit of a highlight on the top corner. It's a circle, but top side edge, and then a wash of that green acid stuff, which is gonna dry glossy, I'm sure. I think it's dried glossy before. It doesn't actually say on it. Does it say on it? Contains caffeine. Well, I'm not drinking it, so I don't care about that. Nope. Nope, doesn't say whether it's gloss or matte. I think it is gloss. And so that will dry looking like glass, which is nice. Right then, metallics. That was a bit heavy there. Didn't want it to be quite that thick. That's that. I am so tempted to paint these just in a exceptionally coppery way, just because they look so steampunk. But I have done all of my Tesla in copper. And it's not like I can't do copper on both, but yeah, I just wanted some variety. So I'm going to do all of my metallics for the Japanese in this brown, bright silver, and then a dark wash with nothing after the wash. Because then it looks like very clean, well looked after metal that's got like dirty metal but not corroded metal. There's actually a similar technique where if you use black instead of brown, but otherwise kind of the same process, it looks very much like, again, very clean, very well looked after, but oily, because the black just ends up looking like oil, especially if you've got the black underlayer and black wash over the top. That is, whilst it's a cool pose, having just that little bit of metalwork sticking out the other side of his hand is slightly awkward to paint. I mean, it's not so bad. Andre says the dried paint sometimes looks a bit chalky. Is that because of the camera? Is that on some of these ones or some of the previous ones? I'm sure that's an effect of the camera, because this camera does desaturate stuff. Like, I've turned up the color intensity, but if I turn it up too much, it looks very silly. I only have so much in the way of control over this particular camera, because this is an actual webcam. It's not designed for quite the level of artistry that I'm doing. Artistry. Yeah, it's not designed for making colours look exactly like they do in real life. That is blue. That should not be blue. I'll hold him at the front for a second because I need to repaint that. Well, paint that, not repaint. So as a point of reference, that is the camera at its native color intensity, and just like, that's not my skin color. My skin is way redder than that. And this blue, I mean, it looks like a bright blue, but it's nothing like the blue in real life. If I push this up to about there, which is just a little bit more, it looks a bit better, although it's still not real. And then, of course, I can go a bit further, and that looks silly, right? You can see in my skin, it's almost glowing. The blue almost hasn't changed. It's become a much more vibrant blue. If I turn it back down and move it more quickly, yeah. So that looks like black and white almost, and that only went to native. I didn't go below native at any point there. But yeah, that's it at max, which looks awful. So I usually keep it about there, which is boosted a bit, but not so much. The contrast is what I really want, but that just makes it look. This just makes it look terrible. Like, that's just a slight increase, and that looks awful. The other problem is that there's very few controls for this camera. Again, it's designed as a webcam. It's not designed for this. Just had an idea to go over the orange again. Yeah, another thing. This is brown on his leg, and this is orange on the bricks. And on camera, they look the same. Like, I can't tell the difference if I look at the screen, but if I look at the model, it's quite clearly the very similar color, but it's quite clearly an orange and a brown. I endlessly fight with camera settings, and the main reason is because I haven't bought a proper camera. If I just bought myself like an actual camera that's designed for this, it would be better, but they are expensive. Sign up to my GoFundMe. No. I mean, technically I do have a PayPal donation link in the description, or I think it's in the description. I keep forgetting. But whilst it seems like an interesting job, and whilst it would be better than working for... Would it be better? I don't think it is. Oh, I'm off camera again. Take your word for it, the whole thing looks blue and brown. Yep, that's kind of what I was getting at. Actually, that camera is usually massively blown out, but usually picks up colour a bit better. So can I hold it in such a way... It can't focus on anything this close, so you're not going to be able to see it actually in focus. But can you see that's a bit more orange there? And the legs are definitely more brown. I'm not sure how clear that is. I can just about see that the leg armour is quite definitely brown there, and the orange and the bricks are definitely orange. That's a better representation of the colour, but again, it can't. That camera cannot focus on anything that close. I think the closest it can focus on is about there. Wow, not even that. Okay. Where was I? Bricks. Can tell, but barely. Yeah. If I would just spend like £2 on a really nice camera and the various other bits that goes with it, I could make much better videos than I do currently. Could have things in focus better. I could have things with better color, like better representation of the color. Now, when you get to this level of photography and cinematography, you will never be able to get the exact real life color on screen, because that just isn't how screens work. But what you can do is make things look how they are supposed to look. They will be vibrant if they're supposed to be vibrant. They will be different colors if they are supposed to be different colors, even if they're not the real colors. And that looks a little more orange now. But that guy's ready for the wash, just like everyone else is. What's next? I think that's all of the Japanese stuff, so let's have a look at some Axis. So I've got the Schwertruppen. Needs a whole bunch more base coating. I think I need to do the... No, I have done the panel lining. I must have done that in the previous stream. So it's metalwork, leather. Yeah, let's take these out. I do have the Naktalben as well. Gnarly looking things. I like how I've got that same purple I was using earlier as a shadow color on these. Works really nicely for their skin. Really makes them look unhealthy. Alright, let's keep you as well, because you're my reference as to what I'm supposed to be painting. What bit, what colour. So I'm pretty sure that is a lighter brown on all of that leather work. And given that we've been painting brown for most of the day, let's just continue that. This is why I'm painting my Japanese in blue, because I wanted to paint something nice and bright and vibrant and not dark and desaturated and brown. Alright. So this time we have some Sturmgewehr magazines on this side. So I think this canteen is actually supposed to be green. Whoops. There we go. Rather than brown, but there's a strap on it that should be brown. So if I remember, I'll come back with the green for that, and I almost certainly won't remember. on account of I didn't remember for these guys. There you go. That's the canteen just in brown there. I do like this pose. It's a bit awkward, but it is kind of cool. This is the gunner from the Toad Schwerfield projector. And he's in this pose because he's reaching over the controls of the weapon. But as I'm using this as an infantry Schwertruppen, I have just glued a Sturmgewehr into his hands. It took quite a lot of effort to cut into his hand and opening it out so that I could actually get him to hold on to the grip of the gun. And cutting to the grip of the gun as well. But I got there in the end. Yeah, so these original ones, have magazine pouches over the top of this gubbins. So that, I'm just looking at the metalwork. That is my darker metal first, then a wash, and then bright silver over the top. So do I have any of that? No, I used the bright silver, so I need the dark metallic now. Which is that one. I went through a phase of using only bright silvers. And I think when this runs out, I'm going to go back to that method. Because I would make dark metallics, dark silver, steel colours out of a bright silver mixed with black usually, and that does a much better job of preparing an area for highlights with the bright silver that's unmixed. It's much easier to layer stuff up, especially if you're not using a wash. It's a much nicer way of doing it, or at least I prefer to do it that way. It's kind of funny how I'm reaching my head around the camera to be able to see it, but I'm also aware that I'm constantly drifting out of frame, which means none of us can see the model clearly while I'm painting it. Yeah, so on his backpack, those little pipes I've done in silver, and those bits at the top as well. God, where is the focal range? There isn't one. It's just too small a thing to be in focus. Oh, that was a mess. Oh, I'll fix that up later. I mean, that is actually a good point. I will fix up all of this later, so I don't actually need to be that careful at this at the moment. That is something I may need to do a video on. Has anyone heard of the 90-10 or 80-20 kind of way of putting effort into a project? The concept is that you rush through as much of the work as you can to get everything sorted out and in place. So you do 80% of the work in 20% of the time, but then you switch over and you do the last 20% of the work in the remaining 80% of the time, because then you slow down and you get everything done correctly, sort things out, neaten things up. And that is kind of the way that I do model painting. I kind of throw base coats and a wash on in a very short space of time, and then once the wash is dry, all that's left is the highlighting, but that highlighting takes me longer than everything that's come before it combined. So these guys I noticed are actually wearing gas masks, whereas all of the previous ones are barefaced. Yeah. So they're just barefaced. Oh, actually that's not true. This guy does have a mask on. Beady red eyes that are not quite painted in the right place. Standard. Stand up. There we go. Are you done? No, you're not done. No, I need to do that green. I told you I need to do the green. You were supposed to remind me. Eternal Rhombus. I spent 80% of my time daydreaming about cool armies, and 20% of my time mustering the urge to paint. Well, you have come to the right place, because if nothing else, if all I manage to achieve is to get other people to paint more, not because you have to paint and that's the thing, but because painting is actually just in its own right an enjoyable thing. That's what my channel's for. It's not what I set out to achieve, but it has become kind of one of the goals of the channel, is to kind of give people that encouragement to get started. Because I know what it can be. I know what it can be like. I know what it feel like. I know a lot of people feel in a very similar way that like you don't want to ruin a model by painting it. Well, here's the thing. I think it is impossible to ruin a model with paint. Now, you can ruin a model when you're converting it, when you're building it, if you cut in the wrong place, if you pour super glue over and destroy things coming up. There are ways to destroy models in paint in the building phase. But in the painting phase, I think it's impossible to destroy a model. It's impossible to ruin a model. And largely that's because you can just repaint a model easily. If you absolutely hate a paint job, you can paint strip it relatively easily. Although, I would actually recommend against paint stripping models unless absolutely necessary. Because there's a concept that I need to kind of sort out in my own head, because I do want to turn this into a video as well. It's something along the lines of the history of the piece. And that's treating the model as a thing that exists. This is, like I said, I haven't worked out how to convey it, how to talk about it yet. But a model is a thing that exists, and it has its own history. And while there are 50,000 of these that have been produced, of this exact same sculpt. Okay, maybe not 50,000, but you get the idea. The mold that made this has made many others, right? And people, you can just go to all the games and buy one, and you can have the same model as this. But this one is different from everyone else's because I've got sand on the base, and not everyone has sand on the base. I've given mine a light machine gun. Not everyone's given theirs a light machine gun. In fact, probably very few people have. I've painted mine in a light, kind of this desaturated grey blue. Not everyone will paint it that way. But there comes a point where you've painted something wrong, or you've dropped it off the table and damaged it, or whatever has happened to that model over the course of its existence. That is part of its history, its existence, and there is, in my opinion, there is a very good reason, a very good argument to be made that you shouldn't hide that. So if you drop a model off the table and you break its arm off, or you like smash it in half, or its back flag comes off, as happens to my Japanese recently, of course you're going to repair it, because that's a model that you want to use and you want to continue to use, and you want it to look good. But you don't need it to look exactly the way it did before it was broken. And by including that in the repair in such a way that it has been repaired, it does look like a complete and finished model now, but it's just a bit different. That is including its history in the kind of, like I say, it's in this, the history of the piece is the concept I'm going with, and I need to work out how to convey that in a much more succinct and kind of understandable way. Andre says, so you are the Bob Ross of mini painting after all. Happy little armies. Well, here's the thing. I've never seen Bob Ross, because Bob Ross is an American TV personality, and I do not watch a lot of American TV. I can't say I watch none of it, because I do. What do I do with this cable? What do I do with this cable? Do I just paint it steel? Because I've got the machine gun as steel, and maybe he's carrying it because it's some kind of Riftech alternate version of an MG34? 42. Because he actually doesn't have any ammo belts for the gun on him. So this is now, so this is some kind of Riftech weapon. Eternal Rhombus says, I'd almost say the soul of the model. Think of it like Toy Story. Each Buzz Lightyear come out at factory setting, but as it exists, it becomes its own entity. A factory reset is akin to its death. That's an interesting way of looking at it, yes, and I do think that's along the lines that I was thinking. Yeah. In the same way as this, a whole bunch of these have been made out of that mold, and they were all the same when they came out. Although there are slight differences, especially in metal casting, but there may be slight differences and things. This is why when I get imperfections in a model, I don't go to the customer services and say, I want a replacement model. Unless it's something major, in which case I will. But I've been modelling for so long that I can fix most things. But I'm far more interested in including that in the model. I'm trying to think of some examples. I know I've had some. So there was famously in the 3rd edition Dark Eldar sprue for Warhammer 40k. This is in the sprue for the Dark Eldar that came in the starter set. On the release of 3rd edition 40k, there was a cold join in the sprue. So a cold join is when plastic moves around the sprue and it's coming together from two different directions, and the plastic is at different temperatures. As one's come around a different direction to another, they're at slightly different temperatures, and the plastic doesn't stick together very well. And because that sprue was designed in probably 2000 or 2001, they didn't have the computer technology to calculate the way that plastic moves around the sprue. They now have that technology, and so you look at a Warlord Games sprue or a Citadel sprue or any modern plastic company is going to have calculated this. So firstly, you're not going to see cold joins very much at all, and if you do see them, they will actually be in the frame, in the sprue itself, not in the model. But in third edition 40k, these Dark Eldar had a cold join in the like the barrel of one of the weapons, and so every time you use that weapon, every single sprue without fail, that piece would break in the middle of the barrel. So you've got the kind of the body and the start of the barrel, and then it would have this break, and then it would have the front of the barrel with the other hand holding onto it, and then the bayonet, kind of that curved blade sticking out of the front. And you would constantly see that same break in every single one. And so what I did is I took some green stuff and I wrapped it around that part of each of the weapons. The Shuriken catapults? No, that's the Eldar. What's the Dark Eldar rifle back then? Splinter rifle? Whatever it is. I would wrap a bit of green stuff around it and sculpt it to be a little tassel, like a little bit of cloth that's been wrapped around it. And I painted those to represent kind of I was probably thinking along the lines of a purity seal, in that it's something that the soldier is wrapped around to say, I'm going to go into battle honorably, or in the Dark Elder's case, dishonorably. I need to do something with this. I need to choose. Yeah, I think I'm going to be boring and just paint it steel. Andre says to me, it's a bit like the Japanese art of repairing pottery with gold. Don't hide the flaw, but celebrate it. Yes. Yes. I don't necessarily think you should always be like highlighting the fact that you've repaired it, but there's definitely cases where, yeah, absolutely, that's acknowledging that it was repaired at some point and kind of calling that out. There's also things like old skirmish games where you would, like, as you go through the campaign, you'd snip the arm off and replace it with a different weapon and stuff like that. I remember doing that. You don't need to be WYSIWYG in a skirmish game or an RPG. As long as you know which model's which, and as long as the bit of paper tells you what weapons they've got, that's fine. You don't have to constantly be cutting the arm off every mission because you've got a new weapon. But yeah, repairs, modifications, various other things that can happen over the course of a model, and that I've been talking mainly about like physical conversions to the model, but this does include paint, which I think was the original point, and that's why I got on to talking about this subject. It's almost like you can just wind me up, point me in a direction, and I will just talk about a subject at length. Yeah, that is exactly as boring as I had feared it would be, but in lieu of anything interesting to do with it, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be that steel. You can't... This camera, man, that just looks grey. That is a metallic paint. That is a metallic paint on the cabling, and that is a metallic paint on the gun. And yet, on that camera, that just looks matte. This camera, man. This cameraman. But this camera, comma, man. Right, third one. What weapon you got? Oh, you got a Sturmgewehr there. I have just remembered something, or noticed something, that before I do the wash on these Schwertruppen, I actually do need to put the Balkan crews on their shoulder pads. I think I still have some as a transfer, but if I don't, I will just have to freehand them. And given that it's a very simple shape, that is not that difficult to expect. But was that all the steel? I think it was. So now it's just a lot of brown. Probably black for the binoculars. Something kind of fairly boring. That. What is that? Other than a relic of it being a digital sculpt. So at the front here, you've got 3 magazine pouches for the Sturmgewehr, but then you've got this lump, and it's not part of the magazine pouch, and it's not a different pouch, and it's not part of the armor because this leg would have the same armor panel on. So yeah, I don't see anything on any of the others that would... Huh. Andre says it's more work, but the cartoony NMM works better on camera. I really like how the how that very simple non-metallic metal comes out. There's another thing that I'm kind of that I want to achieve with this channel. Because things like non-metallic metal scare people. I've genuinely seen people like worried, almost coming out in a sweat, just thinking about non-metallic metal. And it's like, just get stuck in. Absolutely get stuck in. Because, again, firstly, you can't muck up a model with paint because you can just paint over it. Secondly, non-metallic metal isn't a fine art style. There are fine art styles of non-metallic metal because there are different types of non-metallic metal. And starting with something more cartoony, a simpler version of any technique, such as the way that I do non-metallic metal for my Soviets, is just a good way to break into that. Now, I think for something like a World War II soldier that has a very, very small amount of non-metallic metal, sorry, a very small amount of metal on the model at all, it's essentially the barrel bands and the bayonet and the receiver of the rifle, and that's it. So it's just these tiny spots. That was actually a really good entry point into non-metallic metal. Because it's so... What paint am I painting? I don't even know what colour I'm on at the moment. Brown. Yeah, because it's... Firstly, there's so little of it, but also specifically that that each piece is a small piece. It means that you can do that style of non-metallic metal much more easily than you could on a larger piece. I think the RPG-7s that I did are much bigger than a rifle. Like in terms of each piece of metal on it that you're doing the non-metallic metal on each segment, each module, is a bigger piece. And then when you go to something like, I was going to say a vehicle, but not really. Because, yeah, sure, a tank is a big lump of metal, but it's all painted green. Like, there's very little actual exposed metal. And this is why I do my tanks like this, with bits painted in metal that historically wouldn't have been, because it just makes it look so much more interesting to have the camo pattern and then some parts of the model that are not the camo pattern. Like, the tracks are the obvious one. I need to do the wheels, the tyres. But then also I usually do metallic panels, and I usually try and find something on a vehicle, especially a World War II tank, to make it look different. Andre says, as long as it looks good on the table, would go with the metallic paint. Yeah, it does, absolutely. And metallic paint is usually just one layer in a wash. I make it a bit more complex than that, but you can literally take a bright silver paint and then a black wash and have a nice looking effect. Talk to me about the meme of the third edition Necron. I was there, Gandalf. I was there 3,000 years ago, when the deep magic was written. You take your box of Necrons and a can of silver spray paint from the car shop, and then you give them a black wash, and then you glue in those acrylic rods. Done. I literally have seen armies like that. And you know what? As obnoxious as it is, kind of looks good. It kind of looks good. Because that spray paint from a car shop, silver spray paint from a car shop, is very glossy. And so the wash pulls into the recesses like a panel line. And that was even with the nasty, like, they weren't inks, they were called inks, but we were using them as washes back then. Which is strange, because I actually use proper inks to make my washes. So these are... That's a brown ink, and that is a black ink, and matte medium and water. And a spot of washing up liquid. Oh wow, that has settled. I need that today. Oh, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We get there. Give it a proper shake. I'm going to put that there because we are coming up to the end of the stream. I'll give it another few minutes though. I'm going to paint the tyres on this tank. Does the idler wheel on a Hargo have rubber on it? Because the road wheels will, the drive sprocket won't. But does the idler wheel? And I'm sneezing again. Ugh. What was I doing? Yeah, that's come out alright. I'll do a little bit of highlighting in red for that cloak. Obviously, I need to do the wash on the rest of it, but that'll come out just fine. Which means I now have a Daughter of the Motherland Shibito, an American Firefly, an Axis Style Trooper, and I have a Japanese Ashigaru. Thank you, Andre. I did that one. That one is... Oh, it's on the other side. Right, there you go. Okay, I did 2 out of 3. That's not too bad. Yeah, so I've got a bolt action model from every faction. All of the 6 main factions, rather. And I've got 4 of the 5 conflict factions now as Shibito. I've got plenty of duplicates and other models in there as well, because I've got loads of... I like the variety in the Shibito. So the one that I'm currently missing, and I kind of know how I want to do it, but I don't know how I'm going to get the model. And that is a British automata. Probably a Mark 1. And I just want to do it with like wires hanging out. One of its arms is gone. An absolute mess of broken metal, and it just looks like it's been beaten up like a dead soldier turned into a Shibito. This is a destroyed robot that's come back with, and its programming has broken. And so rather than following the orders of its British commander, it's wandered off along with my Shibito. So that's the last one I need to do. And I don't know how I'm going to achieve it yet. But I will achieve it. It may be that I get the plastic set and I just sacrifice one of the plastic models. When obviously we know that the plastic Mark 1 automata are coming. We suspect that the Mark 2s are probably going to come at either the same time or immediately afterwards. But there is the possibility that the Mark 2s come like much later. We don't actually know that for certain. And of course, I mean, we don't know any of it for certain. It's all rumours and hearsay until it comes out. That wheel is not round. That has not... I mean... it's fine. But I just noticed as I was painting it that it's not really all that round. Oh, I had a massive mission of a job recently. Someone had bought a Soviet T-26 STL and asked me to print it for them. So I printed out, and they wanted 5 of them. They wanted an entire platoon of these light tanks. Armor 7, light anti-tank guns. They're like I think they're 95 points each. That's ridiculous things. They're very much like these in a way, but with less machine guns. And they've got 4 pen rather than the 3 pen, because this has just got a low velocity anti-tank gun. But that model, the actual digital sculpt, had a lot of very thin parts to it, especially the tracks. It's almost like they had taken the real design and kind of scaled it down, or they looked at a picture of the real design and model it off of that bit by bit. But they hadn't considered how thick these parts need to be in scale. Because when you're dealing with a 1:56 scale model that is made of 3D printed resin, somewhat of a fragile material. And there was a hood for the exhaust that was just ridiculously thin. And because the entire hull was one piece, if that fails, I have to reprint the entire hull again. I think for the 5 of them, I printed 11 hulls, and I needed 5. I've handed over a few of the scrap pieces to various players in the group to make terrain out of. And I did manage to repair one. I got a 6th good hull. And just absolutely caked over the tracks with mud texture. The thing is, if it was for me, if I was printing 5 of them for me, I would have just taken the first 5, and as we've mentioned earlier in the stream, I would have used that as the kind of as the soul of the pieces we were saying, and covered it all in mud, because you want to be able to repair it in such a way that you can use the model, because that's the whole reason why you got the model. But just reprinting it constantly is kind of a waste of time. There are limits to what I will accept, of course. I wish I knew where I got a garage kit a while back, which seems to be more of an American thing, but like you can very occasionally get them over here. It's not. They've kind of gone out of fashion now. But I had a garage kit of a generic sci-fi ship, and it was awful. It was just disaster. Mine had literally a torn chunk of silicon from the mold in the model pieces that I got, and it was awful. I sent pictures to the guy, and this was in the early days of, like, phones didn't have cameras back then, so I had a digital camera that I took pictures and emailed them to him, and he gave me a discount on it. But I did manage to do some repairs to that. I never painted it. Where did that end up? Because I don't know where that is now. I don't know where that spaceship is. It was kind of this kind of size, like a big old block of resin. Because none of it was hollow. It was all just blocks of resin. I don't think I own that anymore. But I don't know where it went. Right then. So, it is 9 o'clock, and I will end the stream in a couple of minutes. We have done some work. We have painted some models, or not completely, but we've work has been done. Stuff has been achieved. Gonzo here has his brick wall and all of his base coats sorted. All of the other ghosts are now ready for their wash. We have this really cool model of a samurai just kind of sitting there. I'm going to find an excuse to include this guy in my Conflict 47 Japanese army because of course I am. Oh, we didn't do anything to this guy. I'm going to put him back on the shelf. It is totally acceptable to have models on the shelf ready to go in the future. I'm uninspired by him. I had this cool idea and I don't really want to do that idea anymore. So I'm probably just going to paint him in a fairly normal kind of way. I might do a bit of freehanding actually. There's a lot of open space on his kimono? Robe. Hygo's on the way. We did a bit of work on the Schwer Trooper as well. So I need to do the transfers on the shoulder pad and then get those washed. And all of this can go for its wash as well, which I will not do on stream. I have some sneak peeks because I am surrounded by models. So here is the Cossack Walker that I've still not finished, even though I've had it on my desk for the last 3 weeks. You can see here that the dead Ashigaru that I've got here from parts of my Ashigaru sprue with 3D printed body, I'm going to put him about there. Cover him all in mud because my Soviets have mud and snow on the bases. So he's going to just be under the leg. Andre says, can you post some pictures sometime so we can see what the models look like? That's a good idea. I hadn't considered doing that. Given that my backup phone actually has a reasonable camera for taking pictures, I will do that. I probably need daylight for it though. So that will have to wait until tomorrow. I'll post that on my community. Yeah, the YouTube community. The other thing that I'm working on so these are, they're not Space Marines. They're definitely not Space Marines, okay? Stop saying they look like Space Marines. So I wanted some more Japanese assault frame for my Conflict 47 force. So I went looking for science fiction samurai and cyberpunk samurai, and I found a bunch of bits that I could combine together to make it. And some of those bits are proxy Space Marine models. And so these do end up looking a bit like samurai Space Marines, which is disappointing. But this squad, I'm going to build them up and paint them. And I'm going to paint them red rather than blue. Because these models are going to be phased out of my army as soon as plastic assault frames turn up. Which probably isn't going to be that long. Sometime either at the end of this year or into next year is a likely time for that. I'm hoping we get a sprue of exoskeletons for the Japanese that you can make as either assault frame or battle frame. Just one sprue for it all, because that would just make a lot of sense. But until they come, I've got a squad of 10 of these, just so that I can have a full squad of assault frames. Oh, this guy, kind of. I did convert the pistol to have a drum mag. I can't even say... A portmanteau of space and samurai. That's going to sound like a very rude word, I'm sure. I'm not saying that out loud. But they've got this cool katana that I can paint blue, and I can paint the Sashimono blue. And the machine guns here, they've got a drum mag on, just like the assault frames have drum mags. So I've converted them relatively well to be assault frames, but they do still have that kind of Space Marine feel to them, which I didn't want. Oh well, we'll see. Once I finish painting them, it may improve things. I also have my Type 7 Sasori and my Chi-Ha from the Japanese set. I also have a massive tank that I've no idea what it was for. Someone asked for it on a commission. And the hull, it was the main hull and 2 sections of track. And it took the entire print bed to print the hull piece, and then the entire print bed again to print the 2 track sections. The thing is huge, and I've no idea what it's meant to be. I've got bits of it over here. Like, it's that. It's huge. Look at it. It's like nearly twice the height of this guy. It's nonsense. Where's it? The turret's here? That's the turret. Absolutely massive. The thing is, I wasn't going to make one of these for myself, because what do I do with a tank the size of a house brick? But I had quite a few misprints along the way, so I ended up printing a new set of tracks. What was the issue with the? I can't remember what the issue with the tracks was. Yeah, there's a bit of a layer skip going on. You can see it kind of here, that it's all kind of warped out of line. I'm just going to cover it in mud, it'll be fine. But the main hull section on this one actually did shatter into 3 pieces. So I've got the rear 2 pieces there, and then I've reprinted the front piece. It's so huge, it's ridiculous. Absolute nonsense. So once I get that fitted, I'll have this massive, great big tank as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to put a rush on that. I'm just going to kind of do that as I do other things. So my video for this week, if I get it edited on time, is going to be quite an odd one. And I'm going to give you all a bit of a spoiler to it for those of you on the stream, because it is my first ever my first ever wargaming event that I have run. Now, I've run events for different things before, including Nerf games and Airsoft games, but I've never run a wargame event before. And so this was not just a wargame, but a narrative wargame. And I came up with all sorts of ideas, and some of those ideas worked really well, and some of those ideas really didn't. And I'm actually kind of disappointed with how badly some of it went. Now, as a whole, the event wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. And that is essentially the focus of that video. And I'm going to try and get it edited for this weekend. And so you'll hear about my little foray into running an event, the ideas I came up with, and how that went. And specifically, which bits went well and which bits went badly. But if anyone has any questions, ask them now, or I will end the stream. Well, I'm going to end the stream, but ask them now before I end the stream so that I can answer them. I'm also pretty set on doing a Monday at 7 o'clock to do my live streams. I don't necessarily have it perfectly, kind of strictly lined up to do it that way, so I can't just schedule them forever on Monday, but I will say kind of pencil them in for about this time on a Monday is when my streams will be. We're already at 10 past. That's alright. Plenty of painting has been done, mostly on the Japanese. We've got a bit of the conflict, the axis for conflict as well sorted. Why are you out of focus? That's better. Put you there, take you off. There we go. Actually, yeah, a picture of that would be better because you'd be able to see the difference in colour between the brown and the orange. Huh. Andre says, no questions. See you next time. Well, I'll assume that's everyone. So thank you everyone who came past. Like I said, I've got videos and live streams coming, and I will be involved in all sorts of other things as well. So, I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.